Hello there, welcome back. This is video number 3, part 3 of 3, still inside lesson number 2, how to wholesale real estate step by step. And we are now at the point in the process where a cash buyer has stepped up and said, yes, I want that smoking hot deal. At this point, once the cash buyer steps forward, depending on how much money I'm going to make as a wholesaler, I will then make my choice which closing technique I'm going to use to complete the transaction. There are 2 different closing methods that wholesalers use. Method number 1 is called the assignment method. Method number 2 is called the double close method. An assignment of contract is defined as the process of transferring your contractual rights over to another party, and by doing so, you're transferring both the contractual obligations and the contractual benefits. In other words, you step out of the deal and the new cash buyer steps into your shoes. You get paid your assignment fee, and the cash buyer gets a deal served up to him on a silver platter. All right? The reason that assignments are just so simple, and wholesalers love to use them, is that you only have to fill out a really easy one-page document called an assignment form to complete the transaction. You're going to get an example assignment form that comes along with this course, and it should only take you about 4 to 5 minutes to fill out an assignment form once you get the hang of it. Now, my assignment forms have the following parts to them. The top section is how much that you're going to make, your assignment fee, and who are the parties involved in the contract. Next section is the property address and the tax parcel ID of the subject property that you're wholesaling. Next section is the date that the assignee agrees to close by, plus a mutual cancellation clause, just in case they decide to back out of the assignment. This gets you back control of the deal. Next section is how much you're going to make and when you're going to get paid. And the bottom section is the non-refundable earnest deposit that you're going to have the cash buyer put up. That way you can lock them into a deal. Plus giving you some, there's language in there that gives you approval to continue to get information on this particular transaction even though you are stepping out of the deal. This still allows the closing agent to continue to communicate with you. Now, there are a lot of assignments and one major downside when dealing with assignments. A lot of benefits and one major downside when dealing with assignments. The major benefits are, 1, it's cheap. You get paid your assignment fee at closing. All right? And this is a net fee to you. So if you say, I want to get paid $5,000, that's what you're going to get a check for at closing. $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. It's really very simple to calculate what you're going to make. All expenses and fees associated with the closing get passed on to that back-end cash buyer, so your fee is net to you. Number 2, they're extremely fast. Like I said, filling out a one-page document only takes a few minutes to complete. And number 3, they're easy. It's easy to explain to the back-end cash buyer that the reason that you're making your assignment fee is because you served them up an off-market discounted deal that they wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to invest in. Plus, you're leaving plenty of meat on the bone for them to make good money. And if the motivated seller questions you on it, it's very easy to explain, hey, listen, I'm moving it over to a different LLC, or I'm partnering with somebody on the deal, or, this is somebody on my team that actually takes down the deals. It's very easy to explain to them what's going on. The one major downside is visibility. And everybody in the transaction, when you complete that assignment form and they go through the closing process, remember, you've now stepped out of the deal, so you've kind of lost a little bit of control over the deal. The cash buyer and the seller are now doing the deal together. And they're both going to see exactly what you just did and how much money you're going to make. This can upset the motivated seller or the cash buyer if you're making too much money as the wholesaler, as the middleman or middlewoman. So think about that for a second. If you're making too much money, this could be a problem using an assignment method. So my general rule of thumb is this, and I want you to write this down. If I'm making $5,000 or less and it's my first deal with a particular new cash buyer, because it's normally the cash buyer that starts complaining or causing problems when doing an assignment, because at first they're all excited about getting this amazing off-market deal. Then all of a sudden they start looking at it, they're talking to their business partner or their lender, or they're talking to their significant other, their spouse, and they're starting to realize, wow, this wholesaler, they're making $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000, and they're not even touching the property. Maybe I'm not getting that great of a deal on it after all. right? And so if I'm making $5,000 or less and it's my first deal with a particular a new cash buyer, I will simply assign the contract to that end cash buyer for an assignment fee. But if I'm making more than $5,000, I will use the double close method. I'm going to explain why here in a second. The only caveat to this rule is if I've already done a deal or multiple deals with that particular cash buyer and I really trust them, then what I'll do is I'll assign up to $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. I've done $50,000 assignments. I mean, if you really trust the cash buyer, the sky's the limit, and you can assign pretty much any amount. You just have to be confident and really trust your gut that the deal is going to go through, and when they see how much you make, it's not going to go sideways. That would be a very special circumstance if I assign lots and lots of money. Like I've done $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 assignments. They were very special circumstances. I would not recommend it. Typically, I would make the gut call to do a double close method versus doing an assignment, all right? Because you're really not going to save that much money versus doing a double close. It's not worth all the extra stress, all right? So here's how the assignment method breaks down. Step number 1, get a property under contract, okay, and or assignee. Step number 2, you market that property for potential cash buyers. Step number 3 is you assign the contract to a cash buyer for a fee using your assignment paperwork. Step number 4, you turn over all the paperwork to your closing agent. Step number 5, you pick up your assignment check once the deal funds and records. Simple, right? The other closing method is called the double close, and it's the simultaneous purchase and sale of real estate involving 3 parties: the original seller, the wholesaler, and the final back-end cash buyer. The wholesaler is essentially in the middle, right? And they're using the cash back-end buyer's funds to fund the purchase of the original acquisition. Here's what I mean. Works like this. The A to B side is the side of the transaction where we are buying the property from a motivated seller. So the wholesaler puts a house under contract using your standard purchase and sale agreement, buy-side paperwork, and you put the property under contract. That's called the A to B side. We're then going to go and open up escrow, which is called your A to B escrow. Then you're going to start marketing your property to find a cash buyer. And if you're making a bunch of money, remember, we're going to double close versus assign it because we don't want anybody in the transaction to see what we're making. So let's just say we're making a bunch of money. We decide, okay, we're going to double close it. Now we're going to use our purchase and sale agreement sell side paperwork, right, the disposition paperwork, to lock up a cash buyer. And we're going to open up a totally separate escrow. And this is called the B to C side, all right? So now 2 escrows are now opened with the same closing agent, right? And it might have been on day 1 you opened the A to B side, and then on day 10 you opened up the B to C side, all right? It could be a couple days apart, but all done at the same closing agent or with the same closing agent. Then what happens when you go to close, you're going to close both escrows almost at the same time. You start with the B to C, right? The cash buyer puts their funds in the B2C escrow. Let's say it's $100,000. All right, they put their $100,000 in. And though that $100,000, let's say $90,000 of it leaves the transaction and goes over to the A to B side escrow and funds and records that escrow. So $90,000 goes over and that motivated seller gets that $90,000. Well, there's still $10,000 left over in the B to C side escrow account. And that's what you get. So we're using the B to C side's funds to fund the A to B side. Once A to B funds and records, they let the B to C side know that it's funded and recorded, and then B to C funds and records, and that money gets released to you. All right. So like I said before, even though this method costs more money, and the reason is you have multiple sets of closing costs, it's totally worth it, especially if you're hesitant for everybody in the transaction to see what you're making as a wholesaler. So the main benefit now to doing a double close is visibility. Because you separated the purchase and sale, nobody in the transaction sees what you did, or how much money that you're going to make. This prevents the deal from going sideways because the frustrated cash buyers or angry motivated sellers don't know what's going on. All right? There is some paperwork that they have to sign, letting everybody in the transaction know that all or part of the funds in a separate escrow are being used to fund a different escrow, but besides that, no hard numbers are being shared. The downsides are it does cost a little bit more money. Since there are two escrows, the A to B side and the B to C side, now there are two sets of closing costs. The wholesaler is typically responsible to pay for at least one of them. In most cases, the wholesaler pays the A to B closing, and the back-end cash buyer pays for the B to C closing costs. So it does cost a little bit more money, but like I said, it's not that much more money, and it's definitely not risking having the whole entire deal fall apart if things go sideways because they see what you're making. The other thing is they can be a little complicated, especially if you're brand new, right? You're trying to wrap your brain around how this whole thing works. It can take a little bit of time for you to really get comfortable doing this. Plus, there are some closing agents out there that prefer not to do double closes. So the key is finding an investor-friendly closing agent that allows double closes. Trust me, they are out there. So here's how the process works. Let's do a quick review. Step number 1, get the property under contract. This is the exact same as the assignment method. Now this is where it changes. During the closing period, you start marketing the property for sale. You're going to try and extend out that closing as far as possible. When you find that back-end cash buyer, you're going to open up another escrow, right? So when you got on step 1 where you got the property under contract, you opened up the escrow. Remember, that's the A to B side. Now in step 3, you found the cash buyer. You're locking them up using another contract, and you're opening up the B to C side, all right? Like I said, the title company or your attorney will provide all the proper disclosures to make this perfectly legal. Then step number 4, proceeds will flow from the B to C side over to the A to B side and fund the A to B side. Whatever is left over in the B to C side gets released to you. You keep that spread, and everybody is happy, right? So let's go over this concept of what the perfect timeline would be. Let's assume that you negotiated a typical 30-day close to purchase a property from a motivated seller. The first day, day number 0, you're going to get the property under contract with that motivated seller. You're going to open escrow and begin marketing the property for sale. Let's say over the next 1 to 20 days, you're marketing, right? You're guns blazing marketing, trying to find a cash buyer that wants to step up and take this deal from you. Let's say you find one, and hopefully you find one during your inspection period, right? That way there's very little risk to you, and you lock them into a deal. You're going to either assign your contract or you're going to open another escrow, all right? You're either going to double close or use the assignment method. Then what you want to do is put heavy pressure on the cash buyer to close as soon as possible. Realistically, you want them to close much sooner than when your original contract with that original motivated seller expires. And that's because you want some spare time just in case the cash buyer backs out. So let's say on day 0 you start marketing the property. On day 10 you find a cash buyer. You're going to make $20,000, so you decide to double close the deal, and you want them to close by day 20. All right, so day 0 you got it locked up. Day 10 you found the cash buyer, opened up another escrow, started the double close process. Day 20 you wanted the cash buyer to close, and let's say they backed out. That gives you still 10 days left over to go and find another cash buyer. All right, or you can go and renegotiate with the original motivated seller. See if you can extend out the inspection period or extend out the closing period. You can negotiate down the price if you need to, or you can cancel the contract and walk away. All right, you have a lot of options if the cash buyer backs out. Chances are, if you did a great job negotiating with them and you locked up a good deal, the cash buyer's not going to back out, and you're going to be able to close it as soon as possible. All right, so now that you understand the entire wholesaling process and you understand the concept of assignments and double closes, where do you start? I want you to write this down because these are the exact steps I am suggesting that you take as soon as you get done watching this video. Step number one is start to get focus on exactly what target market you're going to focus on and what property type you're going to focus on. My suggestion is you start with single family and you choose a target market where there's a lot of real estate investor activity. Okay? Working class neighborhoods, lower middle income neighborhoods are a great place to start. All right? The way you can really target a market, and listen, I understand if you're in a really small town and there's not a lot of residences in this small town, you might have to go over to the next big town next to you. You want to have a population, okay, and you want real estate investor activity. So how we look up that activity is we can look up how many recent cash transactions there have been from real estate investors. That would give us a pretty good idea of what's going on in that particular market and whether or not we should target that market. You could also talk to other local investors and ask them which area of town they prefer to buy deals in. Talk to property managers and say, hey, which area of town does your landlords want deals in? All right, talk to construction guys. Hey, where are a lot of the investors that you're working with, where are they buying properties in? Talking to other wholesalers, asking them, hey, where does the best deals come from? All right, chances are it's going to be working class, lower middle income areas, sprinkle in maybe some just on the border of war zone. I wouldn't go into like hardcore war zone areas, especially when you first start out. There are buyers in there that actually specialize in really, really low income properties. My suggestion is you just go right to the working class neighborhoods. All right, and the way we look up recent cash transactions is you can call a local real estate agent, and if they're investor friendly and you can get them to run a report, it's very easy for them to run a report inside the MLS of all the recently sold transactions within the last, say, 30, 60, or 90 days where they closed with the financing type of cash. All right, and so you can just kind of use your gut and go, hey, you know, when I'm driving down the street, I see a lot of working class looking houses over in this particular zip code. I just have a gut feeling where that's a great area to target, but I want confirmation. So you ask your real estate agent, hey, listen, can you run me a report in this particular zip code of all the recently sold transactions within the last 90 days where the financing type was cash? Then what you're going to do is when they send you that list of all those transactions, let's say there's 200 houses or 100 houses, okay, then you're going to look at that list and you're going to see if the taxable mailing address of the person that bought the property is different than the physical property address of the property that they bought. If it's different, that means they're not living in the property. That means they're investing in it. The other giveaway is if they bought it in the name of an LLC or some legal entity. All right? And then you can just stare at it and go, wow, there's been, 75 recent cash transactions in this area. That's a great area for me to target. I might even want to get out and go drive the market, really get to know it, and see if I can find dumpsters in the front yard or any construction crews working on houses or lots of for rent signs in the area. That will give me confirmation that this is an area I want to target because it has a lot of investor activity. Step number 2 is you need to begin networking. All right? Remember that real estate is a relationship business. Each relationship that you create is going to take you one step closer to achieving your financial goals. Network with wholesalers, real estate agents, closing agents, and other cash buyers. The magic happens, and trust me when I say this, the magic happens outside of structured networking events. So if you meet somebody at a RIA meeting or you meet them at a meetup.com event, okay, the magic is going to happen when you get to know them at the event, but then take them out for lunch or coffee. All right? Get to know them outside of that structured event as much as possible. That way you can really spend some time one-on-one and get to know what these people really want out of that relationship. Understand how you can benefit them as much as possible. Focus those relationships on listening on how you can come to the table and benefit them. All right? Get out there and network. You should be meeting with at least 1 to 2 potential relationships every single week. I would start with your number 1 most important power team member, which is going to be your closing agent. All right, and I would also start focusing on meeting cash buyers. So if you talk to a cash buyer on the phone and they tell you, yeah, I'm buying properties for cash, Don't just take that as face value. Ask them lots of questions. Well, how many properties have you recently paid cash for? What projects are you currently working on? Are you self-funding or are you borrowing money? And if you get the sense that, wow, this person's actually like a mover and shaker, invite them out to lunch or coffee, get to know them, really build a real relationship with them. Like I said, at least 1 to 2 appointments every single week. Let me give you some advice on finding other wholesalers. Okay? And trust me when I say networking with other wholesalers is really important. Not only are they going to be able to help you or give you inventory that you can sell to your cash buyers, but you can also sell your inventory to their cash buyers, right? You can do this thing called co-wholesaling, right? It's probably the fastest way to make money, period, in real estate investing, all right? Co-wholesaling. That means you only have to focus on one side of the transaction. I only have to focus on, building a cash buyers list, and I'm going to sell other wholesalers' deals to my cash buyers, or vice versa. I'm only going to focus on property acquisition. I'm not even going to worry about a cash buyers list, and once I get a good deal, I'm going to go to my local wholesaling relationships and have them sell the property, and we partner up and we make some money together. So where do you find other local wholesalers? And this is a great indication if there's investor activity in the area, if there's wholesale activity. Number 1 is the Google reverse search. Literally just pull up your computer, go to Google and type in cash for houses or we buy houses companies. Either one works. Paying cash for houses and see what search results come up. Or we buy houses companies and see which ones pop up. You're looking for the local ones, not the national brands, right? And if you find a local we buy houses company, chances are they are also wholesalers and you're going to want to reach out to them and get to know them. Go to Craigslist, go to the real estate for sale section, the buy owner section, real estate for sale buy owner section, and what I suggest you do is in the little search bar, put in the keywords either ARV, investor special, rehab, fixer, fix and flip, off market, wholesale, and any other search phrases that you would have a gut feeling that only wholesalers use. Normal people don't say ARV, after repaired value. Okay? Wholesalers use that language. So if you put in the search bar ARV, chances are if somebody says ARV equals 110,000, that person's a wholesaler. Reach out to them, get to know them. Networking at local RIA meetings. It's a really great idea to go and get involved in your local RIA meetings because that's where all the investors huddle up and meet and hang out. The downside to most RIA meetings is they're a for-profit business. They're always trying to sell you stuff, and a lot of times people will give free advice at a RIA meeting that is bad advice or the wrong advice, and it's because they're new too, or they just don't know. And then the people that control a lot of the RIA meetings, they're trying to sell you something, so they're kind of one-sided advice. So just take the relationships you meet at a RIA meeting for face value until you really get to know them. But if you do meet another wholesaler there, I suggest that you take them out to lunch, take them out to coffee, and really get to know them. Ask your closing agent. Remember, your closing agent can be an opportunity maker for you, right? They are what I call that super relationship. And their network can become your network if you come to your closing agent and show them really how you're going to benefit them. So once you establish a good relationship with your closing agent, ask them to introduce you to other local wholesalers that they or anybody else in their office is working with. Facebook groups is another great place. All right? Social media has made it very simple to network with people, and Facebook allows you to private message people. So go into local Facebook groups, real estate Facebook groups, and get involved and network with other agents and wholesalers that are doing business in your local area. And like I said, the reason is you want to have the opportunity to co-wholesale with them. And pretty much what this means is if you don't have any inventory yet, you can still make a ton of money selling other wholesalers' inventory to your cash buyers. And if you lock up a deal but you don't have a cash buyer, chances are another local wholesaler does, right? The important thing is that, and I want you to know this, okay, that when you're co-wholesaling, it's important if you are going to sell somebody else's deal to your cash buyer, all right, you want to use this thing called a flex option agreement, all right, so that way it's legal and you're legally able to market somebody else's deal to your cash buyers, All right, and this is where this flex option agreement comes into play. This is a flexible agreement wholesalers like to use to legally market another wholesaler's property that they have under contract to your cash buyers. Now, I'm going to provide you an example flex option agreement and show you how to fill it out with this course. All right, the most important thing that you need to understand is that you have to have equitable interest in a property before you can market it, and this is how you get it. On the flip side, if you're going to allow another wholesaler to sell your inventory, you never want that other wholesaler to be able to go around your back directly to the motivated seller and kind of backdoor the deal and cut you out of it. All right, so in order to protect your interest, I highly recommend that you record a document called an affidavit of equitable interest prior to ever sharing your deal with anybody else, other real estate agents or other wholesalers, for them to market your deals out, okay? This, like I said, this document effectively allows us to cloud the title and protect your interest on a property that you have under contract, but you haven't closed on it yet. Use this before you decide to co-wholesale with other local real estate agents or other local wholesalers. I'm going to give you an example affidavit of equitable interest with this course, and I'm going to show you how to fill it out, and that way you can practice on it as well. All right. Step number 3 is you want to start building your cash buyer list right away. I'm going to give you this thing called a cash buyer questionnaire. It's going to come along with this training, and it's essentially the questions and the information that you want to have on record for all of your cash buyers. The most important thing is you want to have your pitch down. Explain that you're a local marketing wizard, you're a local marketing machine. You specialize in uncovering and locking up off-market, deeply discounted properties. You're running across so many great deals right now, there's no way possible that you could buy them all. So when you do control a great deal and you decide that you're not going to keep it in your inventory or in your portfolio, that what you're going to do is serve it up to them on a silver platter so they can make a bunch of money, all right? And I would make it a game. Have fun with this and see how many cash buyers you can add to your VIP cash buyers list within the first week or two. All right, can you get 25 new cash buyers? I think you can. You got to put a lot of effort into it and get out there, really start networking and doing all the things that I'm suggesting you do to build your cash buyer database. Step number 4 is get your paperwork reviewed by a local real estate attorney. All right, and you want an investor-friendly real estate attorney. You want to find one that works with investors, that's familiar with wholesaling, that's willing to review your documents, and that you find that through another investor's referral. All right, don't just open up the phone book and start randomly calling. I've done that, and you can get lucky, but an investor referral is the best way. And remember this, not all attorneys are created equal, so keep interviewing ones until you find one that works with a ton of other real estate investors. Ask your local RIA group members, other wholesalers who they recommend, and start there. I want you to feel confident about the paperwork that we're giving you or the paperwork that you're going to use. I want you confident and comfortable. That way you can immediately take action when a great deal comes your way. Now you get out there and you can lock it up, start making some money. Step number 5 is focus on free leads. Practice by calling. I want you practicing. That's the main reason for this, is I want you to practice calling for sale by owner leads off of Craigslist.com. All right, these by owner leads on Craigslist are free, and you could start practicing building rapport, uncovering the seller's why, gathering property data, establishing price, setting appointments, and getting used to setting up your higher authority. And you could do this all using free leads. That way, when you do start spending money on marketing, maybe say using direct mail, you're all trained up, you're ready to maximize your return on your marketing investment. And hey, I've gotten a lot of deals doing this, so you never know. You may just land a deal on your first day. The way we do this is you go to Craigslist, go to the real estate for sale, in a little search box, type in by owner, and you're going to find all the real estate for sale by owners are going to come up, and just start going through them. If you get a hold of an owner, just start talking to them, right? building a relationship with them, asking them questions about their property. Ask them, hey, have you ever thought about selling to a cash buyer before? Me and my business partner are looking to pay cash for a property in the area. I noticed your home was for sale, and I just thought, hey, I'd give you a call and see if you'd ever consider selling your property for cash to a real estate investor. It's actually really easy to do, and I can make you a fair top dollar offer. You want to talk? Chances are they will. On the flip side, if you call and it's a real estate agent that accidentally posted their property in the buy owner section when it really should be in the buy broker section, don't just let that lead go. Strike up a conversation with them. Hey, I'm a local investor. I'm paying cash for properties. If you run across any great deals, would you mind giving me a call? I can, get you a commission if you find a great deal for me. Vice versa, do you work with any investors? What if I find a great deal and I don't want to add it to my portfolio? I might be willing to pay you a commission to help me sell it to your investor relationships. All right? With those 5 steps being said, now what I want to do is go through a case study of one of my personal deals. I want to finish strong, all right? Kind of show you how this whole idea and concept gets pulled together. All right, and real quick, this is on 15221 North 23rd Lane in Phoenix, Arizona. And it was a little 4-bedroom, 3-bath house, 2-car garage, 2,201 square foot house built in 1974. Here's what the house looked like on the inside. Had foundational cracks. It looked like a hoarder was living in there. They had, stuff in every room. There was mold outside of the showers in both bathrooms. The kitchen was old and outdated. It had like lattice work stapled to the roof. I mean, it was just kind of ugly, right? But it was in a decent neighborhood, and it was a nice little house. And, I knew there was going to be money to be made here. The lead came in from my Magic Bullet postcard. I sent out 5,000 postcards to absentee owners with high equity. All right, my Magic Bullet postcard. This thing has been one of the most time-tested and proven marketing pieces I've had. I've tweaked it over the last 10 years. It is absolutely lethal and generates a ton of leads. And like I said, I've tested this thing. I've changed the headline and the color and what it says at least 500 times and kept tweaking and testing until I got to the point where it just produces so many high-quality leads from this absentee owner high-equity list. A guy named John called us. He said that he was recently released from prison. He's been in prison for 30 years. Now he's living on the East Coast. At some point, he owned this property, and he actually deeded the property over to his girlfriend at some point when they were going to do a refinance. And she was living in the property, paying $600 a month. Property's old, needed repairs, needed rehabbed, and he wanted enough money to pay off that HELOC, which the $75,000 that they borrowed from the property, plus have money left over to give to his daughters. So I built a lot of relationship with John, got to know exactly what his wants and needs were, got to understand the property. I set up my higher authority. Everything was looking really good. Got off the phone, started doing our due diligence, realized that John's family originally purchased the property for $99,650 in 1990. We thought that after doing our research that the after repaired value was between $220 to $240 depending on what you did to the place. And originally, when I first asked him, I said, so John, what is exactly you want to sell the property for? And he said $150,000 if I sold it to an investor. So already he was being extremely reasonable, right? It's not like he was thinking that he wanted $220,000 or $230,000. He said, the property needs a lot of work, and I understand if I sell it to an investor, I'm going to get the cash a lot faster than selling traditionally, so I'm willing to take $150,000. It was in a great neighborhood, lots of investor activity, and we decided that we were going to start our negotiations off by offering him $125,000. All right, and this is basically we ran our maximum allowable offer. Realized that we can pay probably up to $150,000. I mean, even at $150,000, it's still a good enough deal that we know we'd make some money, but we wanted to start it off at $125,000. And John pulled the whole I don't want to take a penny less than $150,000, okay, angle. So we started negotiating with John, and we probably did 3 or 4 phone calls that lasted about 15 to 20 minutes each, building rapport, just kind of throwing out different, pieces of research we found, other properties that were selling for a little bit less, went over to the property, looked at it, really understood it, realized it did need a lot of work, kind of used the amount of work that it needed to negotiate with, and we ended up getting a $140,000 offer accepted, okay, cash offer. We put a $250 earnest deposit on the property, all right. The inspection period ended the day before close of escrow. We used our closing agent. We got to pick the closing agent. I covered all the closing costs, right? That's part of my pitch. Hey, listen, John, doing a deal with me is very simple. I'm going to pay you cash. I'm going to close very, very quickly. I'm going to cover all the closing costs. That's one of the benefits of working with a real estate investor versus selling traditionally. And I chose a closing date on or before March 10th, all right? I now control John's property, and I had the right to wholesale it to a cash buyer if I wanted to. So down the road from John's property, I saw a rehab crew working on another property. So what I did is I drove over to that property, and I asked the guys working on the property if the owner was around. And they said, yeah, he's in the kitchen. And I went into the kitchen, and I met this guy who owned this property. And I said, listen, I got a house right down the street that I have under contract. I'm about to buy it and keep it. But I saw you working, and I know that you already have your rehab crews here, and I'm kind of on the fence of whether or not I want to pay cash for this. I have another house I'm thinking about buying as well, and I don't have enough money to do both. Would you potentially want this deal? Right? That was my pitch to him. And he said, well, yeah, I'll take a look at that deal. Drove over to the property. I showed him the house, showed him all the pictures, explained what I wanted for the property, told him I wanted $165,000 for the property. He came back and said, I'm very interested, but I don't want to pay $165,000. We went back and forth a little bit, and he ended up saying, I'll take it for $162,500, and I want you to pay all the closing cost. And I said, okay, I'll take that deal. Okay, I knew I was going to make a bunch of money. I was making a lot more than $5,000 as my wholesale fee, so I decided to double close this thing. So I wrote up a purchase and sale agreement for $162,500. As is, cash price, $5,000 non-refundable earnest to lock them into the deal. No inspection period. I forced them to use our closing agent. I paid all the closing costs. Like I said, I'm just a really nice guy, right? And I set the closing date on or before March 3rd. All right, so I set his closing date extremely fast. Ended up closing the deal. By the time closing costs were paid, all the other fees were paid. I pocketed $18,383. Boom. What an exciting day. Can you imagine what your life's going to be like when you start cashing checks like this? Imagine when you have so many leads coming in and you understand how to put these deals together. You have cash buyers banging on your doors each and every week saying, what do you got? What inventory do you have that I can look at? I'm ready to buy. Let's go. And you understand how to put these entire deals together. And you're not just doing one a month. You might be doing 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 a month. Your life is going to change. So I want to leave you with some final thoughts, tips, and tricks. This is just some things I think about. 10 plus years wholesaling hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of houses. Tip number one is, even though in some areas, okay, some states, being able to assign a contract is just kind of assumed, all right? Some states, you don't even have to write it down. My rule of thumb is always write down and or assignee on your contracts, okay? And the reason is it's better to just disclose the fact that you could potentially assign it than just to have a seller who doesn't really even understand what an assignment is, not even have it in the contract, never have read it, don't really understand what it is. That way, if they ask you the question, what does an assignment mean? I just say, listen, sometimes when I'm going to buy a property, I don't really know going into the deal which of my LLCs I'm going to end up putting the deal into. So this gives me the ability to, move the contract from one LLC to another. That's all it means. At the end of the day, it's no difference to you. You're going to get the exact amount or price that we agree upon here today paid to you at closing. So do you really care if I close it in ABC LLC or 123 LLC? You don't care, right? So that's all that means. So rule number one, disclose and have on your contract and or assignee. Oops. Let's try rule number 2. Negotiate your inspection period in business days. By adding the word business to the word days, you're going to extend out your inspection period by a few days. Remember, you add in the weekends by using business days. Tip number 3 is on the buy side, limit your earnest money exposure by extending out your inspection period as far as possible, right? So when we're writing a contract with the seller, we want to put down as little earnest deposit as possible, and we want to extend out our inspection period as far as possible. That's why we use business days. That way, if we decide to back out of the deal, we can get our earnest deposit back. Tip number 4, on the sell side, force your cash buyer to put up non-refundable earnest deposit. I don't care if this cash buyer and you guys have done 5 deals together. If they're telling you, I don't want to put up any non-refundable earnest deposit, tell them to take a hike and go find another deal. Because if there's no skin in the game, there's a large chance or a high percentage that they're going to back out of the deal because there's not a lot of risk involved for them not to back out of the deal. Okay, my general rule of thumb is $2,500 non-refundable earnest to do a deal with me. Tip 5, try and have your cash buyer's closing date before the end of your inspection period, if that's possible. That way you're really limiting your earnest deposit exposure. Tip 6 is never pre-release funds to the seller unless you secure your money with a deed. Every once in a while you'll find a seller that can't even afford to pay to move out of their property. So sometimes they come to me and say, hey, will you pre-release some funds to me? And I say, how much do you need? Well, I need $1,000. Well, instead of just handing them $1,000 and hoping and praying that they still use that money to move out and they still do the deal with you, I say, fine, I'll pre-release the money to you, but you got to sign a deed, effectively allowing me to secure my money against the title or against the property. That way I cloud the title. If they try to back out, I can force them to pay me back my money, or I can actually foreclose on the property. All right, tip number 7. Always verify that the person you're dealing with is the real seller. Think about that for a second. The way we verify whether or not they're the real seller or not, because if they just call it off, say, a postcard lead or something like that, and I say, are you the main decision maker on the property? And they say, yes, I am. And I say, okay. And then I go check tax records and find out there's 4 owners. Okay, maybe they're not the real seller or the only seller. Sometimes they work for the seller. Sometimes they're another wholesaler and they try to lie to you and tell you that they're the actual seller, but in reality they're not. Tip number 8, always verify that the person you're dealing with is the real cash buyer. Sometimes it's another wholesaler just trying to lock up your deal to sell it to someone else. Ask them lots of questions. Don't just take what they say at face value. Tip number 9, never show a property to a cash buyer while the seller is present, unless you've sold to this particular cash buyer numerous times and they understand the game. The reason is, the worst case scenario that can happen to you is the potential cash buyer and the original motivated seller bypass you, start talking, and decide they don't need you, and they try to cut you out. All right? Tip number 10, always have a mutual cancellation clause in your assignment form. Mutual cancellation clause is the part of your contract that basically says, hey, if your cash buyer decides to back out of the deal or they don't close on the date that you guys agreed for them to close on, then the contract is null and void. It's mutually canceled. Their earnest deposit is released to you immediately and they don't get it back. Otherwise, let's say you assign them a contract and you don't have a mutual cancellation clause, and they decide not to close on time, and they say, well, I want my non-refundable earnest deposit back for me to cancel this contract. Because remember, you need back control of the property, and you've stepped out of the deal. Well, the only way for you to take back over control so you can hurry up and sell it to someone else is if they cancel it. And if they decide not to, and they try to hold their non-refundable earnest deposit hostage and say, if you give me back my non-refundable earnest, I'll cancel the contract, that's a bad position for you to be in. You never want to be in that position. So just get them to pre-agree upon a mutual cancellation clause and you'll never find yourself in that situation. Use a hardcore contract when doing a deal with a homeowner in foreclosure. I'm telling you this, I've done a lot of deals with homeowners in foreclosure, and they always get amnesia as soon as their financial pain has been lifted. Okay? So make sure that they have to sign an initial all over that thing. Don't use some skimpy 1-page, 2-page, or 3-page agreement with the homeowner in foreclosure. Use a 7, 8, 9, 10-page agreement that has disclosure after disclosure, agreement after agreement, clause after clause, locking them into the deal. And, I mean, shoot, even go the extra mile and record them, you explaining the contract to them and them signing it. So there is absolutely no way they can go, oh, I didn't know I was doing a deal with them. I thought he was giving me or she was giving me a loan. Right? You never want to be in that situation. And rule number 12 is be tough. Be tough. Almost everybody is full of you-know-what. It's just the reality. And my suggestion is you tell people how they're going to do business with you. You know, the guy who taught me wholesaling used to say, Cody, I've never met a wealthy, really nice wholesaler. And it took me a long time to really understand what he meant by that. But the truth of the matter is you can still be a nice person, but have a thicker side, right? A little bit of edge to you. And that's because you don't want people to run all over you. And if you're going to make a lot of money as a wholesaler, you got to just kind of put on a brave face when you're doing business with buyers and sellers and just tell them how they're going to do business with you. I'm telling you, it's going to help you out big time. You're going to make more money and do more deals. All right, that's all I have for you. I really appreciate you taking time to hang out with me. I do have an amazing ebook that I wrote for you. It's How to Flip Houses, No Money Down. I want you to go read that. It's probably going to fill in a lot of the blanks. If you have any questions from any of these 3 videos, it'll probably fill in a lot of the blanks and answer a lot of those questions. I've gone into some pretty great detail in that ebook. Give you a couple more case studies, some more examples. With that said, thank you so much for spending time with me in this video. I hope you walk away from this training not only having a bunch of knowledge, but a newfound love for wholesaling real estate and a game plan on what to focus on first. Don't walk, run. Don't let excuses get in your way. Just go for it. Every day, remind yourself that you're fighting. You're fighting to win big. And you want to use the money that you make from wholesaling to not only change your life, but the lives of everybody around you. All right. With that said, I appreciate you. This is Cody Sperber, the Clever Investor, and I'll see you on the next video.